Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the 10 UN Academy series, and this is English Nerd. So you've written an essay, that's awesome. First of all, props. But you want to get a particularly good grade on this. You want to do well. So how can you edit your essay in order to make it better? A lot of people think that they just need to go back and make sure everything is spelled correctly, the commas are in the right place, but that is only a tiny part of the equation. You can do so much more to make your essay shine. And so I'm going to give you a checklist of things to make sure that you've done. And if you go through this checklist, then I am convinced that your essay will be significantly better than it was at the beginning. So I'm going to go through starting with an introduction, then body paragraphs, then conclusion. Most of these tips are going to pertain mostly to English essays, but the majority of them, really all of them pertain to English essays, but the majority of them will also help you out with history essays, research papers, social studies essays, really most essays that you might need to write. So without further ado, here is your essay editing checklist. Number 1, do you have a title? If you don't have a title, then of course you need to write one. If your title is something like A Tale of Two Cities essay, that is boring and lame. So I have included down below a link to one of my videos that talks about an essay title hack that I have found particularly useful, but the point is there needs to be a professional sounding title, something that catches the eye and isn't really boring. So that's tip number 1. Number 2, could you begin with a better hook? So no matter what kind of essay you're writing, this could be a college application essay, a literary analysis essay, there ought to be some kind of hook. There ought to be more than just A Tale of Two Cities was written by Charles Dickens in 1859. I'm already bored with this essay as a teacher, and you don't want your grader or the reader to be bored with what you've written. So I've also included a link down below for different kinds of hooks that you can use. Really, I have individual videos about a big portion of these points, and so I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty. But if you are wondering how to write a better hook, then check out that additional video down below. Your introduction should also include relevant summary and definitions. So this is the place where you can summarize the work of literature, or at least the scene that you're going to be talking about. This is the place where you can define your terms. If you're writing a paper about justice, there are lots of different definitions of justice and equality, and so this is the place for you to really expound on those things. Individual body paragraphs are not the best place for general summary. It's the place where you need to get more detailed, but the introduction is the perfect place for you to summarize what is relevant for the reader to know right up front. So have you done that? Or did you just write 3 sentences that kind of lead into your topic? If so, then consider beefing that up. Okay, number 4, did you begin too generally? It's really common for people to begin essays with something like A Tale of Two Cities is a great work of literature. Yes, very much yes. If you've seen my entire series on A Tale of Two Cities, I agree. But that is really vague and doesn't say anything original whatsoever. And so you don't want to start out with something like that. You don't want to start out with the topic of justice has been debated since the beginning of time. Basically, if you could put in that movie trailer voice, then you have started too far out. You want to get a little bit closer to your topic and rework those first couple sentences. Finally, as far as the introduction goes, point number 5 is, do you have a strong thesis statement at the end? So I have also included a video about thesis statements. It is one of my earlier videos, so pardon the quality, it's not ideal, but the information is spot on. Your thesis statement is whatever the claim is that you're trying to prove throughout your paper. So it's however you answer the prompt, basically. So you want to make sure that you answer it clearly, that you have reasons, that you have something that you're proving throughout this paper, at least for the kind of essays that I'm talking about. I think most essays are trying to make a point, and so what is that point? Make sure that that is really crystallized into a strong thesis statement at the end of your introduction. That will prep the reader for what to expect and look for in the rest of your writing. Okay, next I'm looking at body paragraphs. So those are the meat of your paper. Most of your paper is going to be a body paragraph. So what can you look for and improve? So first thing you want to look for is a strong topic sentence for each of your body paragraphs. Topic sentence is basically like a mini thesis statement. What is the claim? What is the piece of your answer, the piece of your thesis statement that you're going to be proving in this particular paragraph, and then this particular paragraph? That should be clear, again, right up front. I need to know as the reader, as the grader as well, what this paragraph's purpose is, and the topic sentence is going to do that. So look at the first sentence of each of your body paragraphs and make sure that it's saying something clear, that it's making a claim, that it is indicative of what you actually end up talking about in that paragraph. Secondly, and this is more of a stylistic thing, what can you delete? The chances are, even if your paper is short, shorter than the required length, there's probably stuff that you can delete, and it's much better to get rid of fluff and repetition and wordiness and then expand in other ways. I have a video about how to make your paper longer without adding fluff, so I would recommend that, again, down below. But the best way to do this, I would recommend, is to actually print out a copy of your paper, a hard copy, and then physically scratch out anything that you think you could do without. So is there wordiness? Get rid of it. Did you repeat yourself too often? Get rid of it. And that way you can also kind of play around with what you need to keep and what you can get rid of without committing to changing the original document, which is a lot more, a lot scarier, I think. And so what can you delete? There's almost always something that you can get rid of or at least combine to make your writing smoother. Okay, next, another stylistic thing that really applies to your entire essay, but I put it in the body paragraph section because that's the majority of the paper. Do you have too many to-be verbs, too many linking verbs? So is, was, were, seems. Do you have too many of those? So I want you to go through and check, perhaps circle those and see, could you rework the sentence or the meaning in order to use a more active verb? If you do, then your style will be a lot more palatable, it'll be dynamic and feel less repetitive sometimes and clearer very often. So go back and see if you can replace those linking verbs with active verbs. Another stylistic thing, I know a lot of these are stylistic and I'll get to some of the more content items later, but have you been repetitive? This is something that I see a lot in high school papers. Perhaps the prompt is a higher level prompt. It's difficult and you have an answer, and so you want to make that really clear, but you end up just kind of repeating yourself because you're not sure what else to say. If you are repetitive, then identify where that is, either repetitive in your wording or repetitive in your ideas, and see if you can actually make a new point instead, or again, just delete all that repetitiveness. Okay, so now more into content stuff. I want you to look again at your essay and see, is there a place where you could use a more specific piece of evidence? Too often what I see is that people will make very general statements to support their claims. Well, it's clear that Hamlet is insane because he acts crazy around Polonius. Okay, I mean, sure, fine, that's a starting place, but that's more of a brainstorming kind of starting place. That's not where the essay itself should be. So rather than making a general statement like that, you want to see if you can add a quotation, a source, if you could paraphrase more closely. What you want to imagine is, as you're writing any sort of essay where you're proving a point, you want to assume that the reader, that the grader is already familiar with the book that you're talking about, the topic that you're writing about, but they disagree. So it's your job not just to say, oh, well, you know, Polonius. It's your job to say, no, when he says this, here's how it connects to my point. And so go through, look at those claims that you've made and make sure that you have specific evidence, not general statements, but specific evidence to support each one. So that kind of feeds into my next point, which is, did you back up each claim with evidence? It's easy to make claims and not realize that they are claims that need to be proven. Hamlet acts crazy around Polonius. That's really more of a claim than it is evidence. And so whenever you say something like, oh, the language is always really negative, or just any claim that somebody could contest, then you need to provide evidence for that. So go through, do whatever makes sense for you, highlight all of your claims perhaps, and see, did you actually support that with direct evidence or sources? Okay, another point that has to do with evidence, did you gather your evidence from multiple places? So if you're writing a research paper, did you get a variety of sources that come from different points of view that all support your cause? Or did you really just pull from these two people? If you did, then chances are it's not going to be as strong of a research paper. As far as literary analysis goes, there's a similar idea that if you want to prove a point, if you want to say that Hamlet is insane, you can't just point at that's a couple of scenes where Hamlet acts crazy around Polonius. I could come back as somebody who's also read Hamlet and say, well, what about this part of the play? What about this part of the play? And so you want to pull evidence from multiple sources or multiple parts of the work that you're talking about. So take a look at the evidence that you have. Does it all come from the end? Or did you pull some from the beginning as well? If you pulled it all from the end, then what you're looking at is kind of a faulty science experiment where you have too small of a sample size to really make your point. So you want to make sure that you have an ample sample size and that you have made your point well, not only with a couple of particularly useful scenes, but also some other parts of the work that maybe even don't initially seem to support your point, and you need to make that connection for the reader. Okay, next one. Did you introduce each quotation or source? Do we know who's speaking? Do we know what the context is? Do we know why we are hearing this piece of evidence? So at the very least, include a tag. A tag is just Hamlet says, etc. So we know what we're looking at there. Too often what I'll see is a claim and then a quotation immediately after. And I need to know what the context is, even if I'm the teacher, even if I know where that is, I need to know that you know where that is. And so make sure that you've introduced each piece of evidence so we know where it fits in to the story, to the argument, etc. Okay, did you cite correctly? That's my next point. Did you cite correctly? So if your teacher insists on MLA citation format, for instance, which I do and many other English teachers do you know how to put those parenthetical citations at the end of your quotations? Do you know how to do that correctly? It's just last name of the author and then page number in parentheses, no comma, no PG dot for page. So see what the expectation is for citing your sources. Is it MLA? Is it APA? Is it Chicago? Is it just a work cited at the end, which is, it's unlikely that there would be a work cited at the end without additional citations within the paper. So know the expectations for that and make sure that you've done that correctly. Sometimes the difference between an A and an A minus is just making sure that you've formatted that correctly. So you can look up plenty of examples online. Next, did you explain how each quotation actually connects to your claim, how it actually supports your argument? So you've looked at your claims, you've made sure that you have evidence, you've introduced it, you've cited it. Now do we know how that really fits in and proves your point? So that's the most important part of using evidence is making that connection. And so make sure that you spend a couple of sentences and explain. You might have to go back and point out some words in the quotation or in the source that stood out to you to show that this was going to prove your point. So go through again, check those pieces of evidence, and then look at the sentences directly after each quotation or source and make sure that you've made that connection. If you haven't, then you have an incomplete argument, and you just need to connect that really important dot. So include all of that. And then finally, as far as body paragraphs go, did you transition between ideas? So the most important transition is arguably the one between one paragraph and another. Why are you talking about this main point after this main point? Is it just like a checklist of random things that don't really connect? Or is there a logical flow to this argument? So did you transition from one to the next? And a transition is more than just saying, also this, or this as well. That's not really a transition. What you want to do is connect the ideas for the reader. This idea and then this idea. But what a lot of people forget to do, even if they have really great transitions between their paragraphs, is to transition between ideas within the paragraph as well. There ought to be a logical flow. So this might be harder to see. You might want to give your essay to somebody else and just ask, was there any time that you were confused about why I talked about this after this? And just mark that for you so you can see where you might need to make the logic clearer for people. Okay, on to the conclusion and some overall thoughts. I just have 3 more on this checklist, 3 more items. 1, in your conclusion, did you do more than rephrase the thesis statement? Or in other words, did you include significance? This is going to make your conclusion really pop. Yes, you need to remind the reader or the grader what you proved. So you do want to mention the thesis statement, your main topic, again, your main claim. But you need to do more than that. You should really say why this matters. Why does it matter to our understanding of Hamlet? Why does this matter to America as a whole? Why does this matter? So have a mic drop moment at the end of your paper, whatever that looks like for you. Okay, second to last thing here. Did you proofread? So here we finally get to, did you proofread? Is your spelling correct? Is your grammar correct and clear? Did you use the right verb tense? I know with literary analysis, I often see people use past tense, and the correct tense is present. So if you're writing an English paper, then check, do you have a bunch of past tense verbs when you're talking about the book? Or is it in present tense? So double check, make sure that those things are correct, that you've crossed your T's, dotted your I's, and you're ready to go. And then finally, last but very certainly not least, go back and actually read the directions and the prompt one last time. Did you follow the prompt, or did you leave something out? If you left anything out, if there was a part of the question that you did not address in your essay, then go back and make sure that that is all filled in. So those are my suggestions for you. That is my essay editing checklist. So go forth and do well on your essay. I trust that if you do these things, I can guarantee you that your essay will be stronger than it was before. Take a look at those links below if you want any additional information about these topics. And like this video if you like it. Be sure to subscribe for more English nerdy goodness. Ring the bell for notifications. And I will see you next Monday. Bye.